I'm Baldwin Burgess. I run this little business called, it used to be called BD Insider, but I just recently renamed it to Business Story Strategist. And what I do for a living is I help companies and people render very complex messages more simple to understand, but most importantly, more easy to share. And so what I want to talk about today is, it's going to range from my addiction to Netflix and what that gave me to my career. I want to speak about how this amazing hidden secret that's been hiding in the open for so many years, storytelling, what it's exactly made of, how we can use it for our business. And I want to show you a little bit about some of what I found were quite creative applications of putting a story into a package. Now, I'm totally new to the packaging world, so I don't really know what I'm talking about when it comes to packaging. But what I found interesting when I started getting to work on this presentation is that, yet again, this is another industry that is very similar when it comes to finding the right story. So let's get into this, right? We live in this crazy, noisy, crowded, and very confusing world out there. And we're all suffering from it. Our inbox is full. It's very difficult to pay attention. I think we have this distraction epidemic which is growing. It's just getting worse and worse and worse. And we're all struggling. I mean, we're not really built for this kind of information. But the thing so a few years ago, when Netflix sort of became popular, I found myself in the middle of the night binge watching a series. And there was a time that I was trying to figure out whether I should watch House of Cards or I should watch the Breaking Bad, and they were competing with each other, and I just couldn't stop watching. I said, this is ridiculous. I like to think of myself as being someone who's busy. I'm spending all these hours that I should be getting sleep, basically jeopardizing my productivity the next day, throwing away my time watching these shows, but I just couldn't stop. And then all of a sudden I had an epiphany. I said, how do these guys do that? How do these guys make us pay so much attention without getting anything in return? So I went into the script writing, and there's got to be something going on here. And so I delved deeper, and I really wanted to find out how these people can get our attention and hijack our attention for so long. Why do we binge watch? And why do we, once we see a story, why can't we stop paying attention? So I wanted to find out, and I found out a few really interesting things that I think a lot of businesses should know about. First of all, the most important discovery that I made is that stories are that secret password to anyone's attention. I'm going to spend a couple of minutes speaking about that, why that is the case. First of all, stories are how we've always communicated with each other. Your parents' parents, I'm sure that many of you had parents, your parents, so their great-grandparents, chances are that they did not know how to read or write. But their parents definitely probably did not know how to read or write. There was a small elite who knew how to read and write. And for all the millennials before that, it was the only way to package and pass on information. Today we have stories for entertainment purposes, but before it was purely to convey information. Okay, so the thing is, our brain is therefore built, at the moment it recognizes the least hint of a story structure, it starts paying attention. Because it's our survival dependent on it. Information was packaged as a story, our brain knows it has to pay attention. So what stories do, they actually organize information so our brain doesn't have to deal with it. We get it packaged. Stories are packaging of information. That's the first packaging angle here. The thing about our brain is that it's a very old piece of hardware with completely outdated software. I don't know if you know this. The brain is an organ in your body that consumes most calories, even more than your heart. So that's why you feel so tired when you pay attention. Today you're feeling tired. You've been paying attention all day. That's why, the thing is, the human being, to survive, the brain had two main functions, because the humans have been around for 250,000 years or 1 million years, depending on what thought group you belong to, but at least 250,000 years. The brain is trying to, one, keep us safe. So when you walk into some place, you know where the exits are, you know all the safety features, unconsciously, but that's the first thing your brain's going to register. You hear a little noise there, you're going to focus on that. And the second thing, it's going to force you to save energy. The only reason why it does that is because now when you're hungry, you just walk to the refrigerator or you pick up some food and you eat it. Before, when you were hungry, that was a problem. It meant that you had to go and find food, which sometimes meant hunting or sometimes meant, no. So our brain is kind of trained like, don't rock the boat, keep quiet, don't pay attention, don't use calories. So our brain is not built for paying attention. The thing is, we're using it for that. But the good thing is we can hack this. We can hack we can hack other people's brain in a way with stories. Stories provide clarity. And if there's any reason why we want to consume stories, I personally strongly believe is that stories provide us with a structure that give us clarity in a world that's increasingly confusing. What happens in the absence of clarity? Well, we make the professor mistake. We're all guilty of it. The professor mistake is, very simply, well, you know so much about something, and then if you can't make it simple to understand, first of all, you may not be that much of a master you think you are. Secondly, the professor mistake is when we forget about what it took us to learn things. So often what we get is, we get someone's attention, and we have this academically induced habit of throwing everything we know at them as much as we can, and we're going to try to be efficient about that. We're going to just dump a slide deck on them of 50, 70, 100 slides. That's what we do. That's what we've been trained to do. We've got to rethink this. Because when we make the professor mistake, we enter in the curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge, to quickly explain this to you, is if a knowledge level about your speciality is from 0 to 10 or 1 to 10, we're at level 10 because this is what we do all day long. We think about it. Our whole career's been about it. Whatever we do all day long is about this specific knowledge. Our end clients are usually at 1 or 2 level knowledge. Why? Not because they're idiots, simply because they do other things and they work with us because they don't know what to do what we do. So therefore there's a transaction here. We know this. So what we do is we make an effort. We're going to go down to level 5 or 6. We're going to do an effort. We're going to make this easier to understand. But the thing is, to make it truly intuitive, i.e. so it enters the brain seamlessly, we should be playing at 1 or 2. And that's that curse of knowledge, that's what's working against us. So why do we do this? Well, first of all, it has a lot to do with our ego. It took us a long time to learn what we know. We invested time and money into it. And so dumbing things down is frankly going to make us feel kind of stupid. That's why there's such a barrier to doing this. So we feel smart. We're very proud of ourselves, but often our audience, what do they feel? People are very polite, by the way. They'll say, yeah, sure, yeah, whatever. It's just another thing. Most people will just basically also keep up appearances against their own interest. Peer pressure is probably more important than the previous one. Peer pressure is when we focus on the rest of the industry to sort of make sure that we're in the pack. This is what our customers see. So this is what we see. We're so close to this pouch and how it works, and all this. There's a huge difference. That's 1 to 10. And the other thing that's interesting is, especially in my native industry, is investing. It's finance, and in every industry, people don't buy the best product. What they buy is the one that is easiest to understand. And the reason why every industry has 2 or 3 mega brands that take all is because it's not because they're better, but it's because all the smaller ones are struggling to explain that story to them. They're not easy to understand. So what the consumer does to the client is, I'm just going to go with whatever makes most sense to me. The easy choice. The brain is lazy, remember? It doesn't want to work. It'd go to the big brand. The thing is, I hear this often, but yeah, I'm in a B2B area. What if my clients are also experts, right? Well, you go well, actually, of course they're experts. But they also have people who are not experts that they have to deal with. And the thing is, if you convey an idea to another professional at your level, and he says, that's an awesome idea, but to him the idea is new, how do you expect that person to go and champion your idea with those at level 1 or 2? So the thing is, the reason why we have to sort of simplify our message, make it more intuitive, simply has to do with the fact that you're rendering a service to your B2B partner to make it very easy for them to transfer the message onto the right audience. See how this all fits together? Again, stories are supposed to make information easier to share. So if you think in stories, you're always going to be on track on making sure that whatever information comes out of your realm is going to compute and make sense. So okay, primer to why does storytelling work? Well, it's not an art. Contrary to popular belief, story, unfortunately, is actually a science. It's formula driven. It's old as old as soon as we painted something on a cave wall. That was a way to structure information in the form of a story. There's formulas. You know what? My favorite way to describe it is if you go to a classic concert, before they start, there's all this noise, all these same people with the same instruments, Then all of a sudden, they snap into symphony. What's the difference? It's the same instruments, the same people. The thing is, they filtered the notes, the same notes, into the right format, and then it sounds like music. So data and facts is very much like noise, and you filter it through story structure, and it's going to start making sense. Strangely enough, there's only 5 real stories ever been told. The slide says 7 because there's 2 variations on those 5. But all over history, no matter where you look, there's 5 formulas that have been used over and over and over again. And the reason is, if you don't use the formula, people won't recognize the story, they're going to think it's noise. Simple as that. That's why it's such a science rather than an art. Now, this is the most essential story structure is a 3-act story. It has to do with characters that we can relate to, conflicts and resolutions. A little bit more detail. Why are the heroes in the films and in the books underdogs? Why are the heroes not the powerful, beautiful people with helicopters and bases on the moon or underwater empires? Why? Because they're the villains. But the people, the heroes in the movies, are like us, so we can relate to them. It's something that we can connect with. We can root for the hero because we recognize ourselves in the story. It's a very important fact about storytelling. The only way you can get your audience in your story is only if there's that connection. That's just the what happens next. Once that question gets asked in the mind, the mere hint of what is going to happen now, you are hooked. Television series, good editors with good authors, they use this all the time to keep you going. What happens next? You just have to find out. And then resolutions are really the solutions. There's always a sort of an ending. Endings also have variations, but in the end, the resolution is the solution to the what happens next. So it takes you out of the story loop. Those are 3 elements. Now there's one thing, I want to take it one small notch higher in complexity, but not much. These are tales, timeless tales. Homer, Star Wars, Rocky, Breaking Bad. What do they all have in common? They have one thing in common, and that is the hero's journey. And that's the journey of transformation of the underdog, that person who's just like you. And this was invented by Joseph Campbell, who studied mythology. His big question in life was, how is it possible that certain stories have traveled over time and have survived and others won't? And he found that it's the hero's journey is that odyssey. It's an odyssey of transformation. It's an odyssey where you have character, someone like you, going through a conflict, challenges, finding resolution. I'm not going to get into much detail because we don't have time for it. But what does this have to do with business? Why is this guy telling you about stories? Well, actually, it's not like, unfortunately, we don't live in a world like you walk up to a B2B client and say, this is my price. It's like, I'll have that now. It doesn't work like that, right? You have to follow up, stay on top of mind. You have to sort of like convince them over time. So what if you did that through a story structure? What if you could, make this story, your story, all about them, have them connect with the underdog and take them through the story? That's why stories matter. Stories are useful because good stories are always about the audience because of the underdog, so we can make them about our audience or our clients. So great stories are about our clients. The hero's journey is the client's journey. And if the way I structured in my work is I see 5 steps here. So it's character, conflict, it's guide. And this is the interesting thing. We're not the hero of the story. We're the guide. The hero of the story is the client. The journey is that what we call like follow up, keep top of mind. That's the client's journey. I'm not sure if you use this in your industry, but this is popping up in more industries. The client journey. What is the transformation of the client from prospect to client to fan mail? And then there's the outcome, which is that resolution. This is how I structure it. This is how it works. I have a little surprise for you after this, so you're going to hear a little bit more about this. So it's all really about making it possible for these clients of ours, or customers, to adopt new ideas, desires, and most importantly, in your business, I guess it's all about, hacking them so they can adopt new habits, right? So it means that we have to make these ideas irresistible. And I want you to think about, who's seen this movie? All right, what's this about? You stick an idea into someone's head and you make them believe it was their idea. You see, that's what, actually, it's a really cool film. It's one of my favorites, but if you do right storytelling, that is exactly what you're doing. I'm like, what happens next? The story loop? That's creating inception in the mind of your prospect. All right, let's talk. This is from the Vils in the corner of the world. This is good old Fritz, the potato king from Prussia. I want to start with this example. This guy, in my opinion, is, in my research, it's one of my favorite findings. In the 18th century, this old Fritz heard something about potatoes in the Americas. It says that, like, this, it grows in the ground, it's very nutritious, it's very easy to farm, and all that. They said, I'll have some of those, bring them to Prussia. And so they did, and nobody wanted to eat them. So Fritz had a problem because, as most leaders, every now and then, the harvest went wrong, and then they'd have famine. And you know what happens when there was famine? Well, they cut the leader's head off. So since old Fritz wanted to keep his head on his body, he said, this potato idea is really cool because I can diversify my agriculture. But nobody wanted to eat it. It was too alien. So what he did is he asked the army to protect and guard a field of potatoes next to his palace. But he also gave them the instruction, don't guard it too much. Let them steal one every now and then. And so all of a sudden, what's going on next to the palace? What is that guy growing there? You can eat this. This must be superfood. And that's how Fritz made sure that the potato became popular. There was an inception going. There was a story around it. There was a mystery. There was something people wanted to know more. Okay. I love this example. It's not exactly packaging, but it's the full philosophy behind it. Another idea is like, so this is me from the outside. I'm just like crashing into your atmosphere. I have no experience in your industry. And I look at these pouches and I say, like, so why would somebody want to drink from a pouch rather than a bottle? Right? That's my world. I'm obviously not that close to it. So how do you do that? How do you change that habit? How can you convince how can you have I have an idea, if I were a kid, how this would totally do it for me. I would totally start drinking out of bags if I saw this. That's an interesting idea. So you can play around with, like, again, there's a bit of a story here. NASA did this, it's so cool, and it's just the way, I'm just improvising really here. You can get really creative, like, why would you drink out of, you can play the astronaut theme. I would totally buy this because of the astronaut theme. Or you can take it really further. You can say, so how are we going to be keeping food on a place like this? Because some people are telling us that we're going there. There's no doubt about it, right? How is Elon Musk, is he going to start investing in pouches too? Is that the way to do this? Is that how we're going to keep food fresh for many years out there? We're going to be on our own for a little while. You see spinach, you see it in a bag like this. But remember that guy? Shouldn't it be looking more like this? Somebody actually did that. My wife she's from Spain, and Popeye, as I say here, it's very, very important in her youth. And she was always angry when, because they couldn't find the spinach just like Popeye ate it. And again, the story is like, you can connect the story to Popeye. I know this is pretty obvious, but why did they put this in a bag? Lola was so kind to send this to me that, in fact, somebody actually did that, and look what happened, right? And they used the Popeye theme. So there's a bit of a nice story there as well. When the creator of Winnie the Pooh, his name escapes me, died, this brand thought, let's do a homage. The question is really, kids really like bears. What do bears like? Well, they like honey, so why not have a honey pot in the form of a bear? Makes so much sense, right? And then you have the toddler pointing his finger, I want you to buy that one, mommy. And I don't think we had this in Europe, but I ran this by a friend of mine who's from Canada. I said, absolutely, yeah. We would only want the bear. No way around it, right? Toblerone is an interesting one. That's a total, where did that come from? Triangle-shaped chocolate. You see there's a mountain, the Matterhorn at the back, and that's what they officially say the story was behind the packaging. Apparently the owner, got the idea in a cabaret in Paris because he saw that all the acts ended in a triangle. There's a bit of a mystery story there. But anyway, that's an interesting story. Chocolate from Switzerland. Switzerland has mountains. The chocolate looks like mountains. It's very memorable. This is a bit of a strange example, but you have to go back 100 years or more when roofs leaked when it was raining. And in the Boston area, these guys had a big, keeping salt dry was a major challenge. And so these guys came up with a little device at the top that's a spout that you can open up. And they put their whole branding around this idea that your salt will stay dry, so they put this little girl under an umbrella. That's another story that this keeps, and so that's why that became such a big brand in its day, because the message was there, bang, your salt's gonna stay dry with this little pot. And then finally we have these guys, why chocolate is such a product of affection. Well, Cadbury's figured out, what if we put it in a heart-shaped box? How simple can it be? But that's a whole story again. There's a whole story about chocolate being all about affection. So in summary, this is stories are really that passport to anyone's attention. If you accept that, and you accept the fact that your stories are really like any other story you consume, is secretly all about you, or you're not about you, but about your customer, can go a long way. And it's our package that can be that character that the audience resonates with. So I think if you break it down, if you sort of like start thinking around these 3 points, it might actually revolutionize the way you think about your packaging and your branding. And so what is your story? That is really the question. I hope this gives you a new perspective about how you can think about your story. And one more thing before I finish, I have an online course about this. And this is how I came in touch with Lola, because Lola found it and she took it and said, like, can you come and talk about this? And I'd like to give you all a nice little surprise. I'd like to give you a present. I'd like to invite you all to take part in this course. I usually charge just under 200 euros for this course. It's an online course, but it's my gift to you. I want you to have it if you really want it, if you would like to sign up for it. Suggest that you contact Lola. I will make sure that she has a link that gets you into my online landing page, and you can sign up for free. This is everything I spoke about in the last 20 minutes. It's a little bit more intense, but it should help you, use a story format for almost anything you want to communicate. And it's not only about packaging, it's about when you present something to your boss. It can even probably help you convince friends or family members of certain ideas or ideals. So the storytelling format that I apply there can be used for almost any form of communication. So I very gladly invite you to take up my offer to sign up for my course for free. And I thank you for your attention.